The Kresh warriors that emerged from the ships were nothing like Bora and Doyun's peaceful species. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with dark gray skin covered in what looked like natural armor plating. Their faces were angular and cruel, with eyes that glowed red in the darkness. Each carried weapons that hummed with energy, technology far beyond anything on Earth. There were 8 of them, led by one even larger than the rest. His armor was decorated with markings that probably indicated rank. Through Bora's fearful whisper, Taman learned his name was Kreth, the captain who had originally captured them. Humans. Kreth's voice boomed across the farm, speaking perfect English through some kind of translator device. We have tracked our property to this location. Return the Velian children, and we will leave your primitive world in peace. Resist, and we will demonstrate why your species should fear the Kresh Empire. Minho stepped forward, his badge held high even though it meant nothing to these creatures. Those children are under the protection of Earth. Leave now or face the consequences. Kreth laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Earth has no protection. Your governments don't even acknowledge we exist. We've been taking humans for decades. Soldiers, scientists, children. Your authorities cover it up, afraid of mass panic. You have no power here. The words hit like physical blows. Years of disappearances, unexplained vanishings, conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. Taman felt rage building inside him, hot and fierce. They had been taking people. Taking children. Jay's camera crew filmed everything, their equipment's red lights showing they were broadcasting live. Whatever happened next, the world was watching. Last warning, Kreth said, raising his weapon. Give us the property or we take it by force. They're not property, Taman shouted. They're children, and you'll have to go through all of us. Kreth's response was immediate and brutal. He fired his weapon at the ground near Taman's feet, and the earth exploded in a shower of dirt and burning grass. So be it, kill anyone who resists. Stun the children. We leave in 5 minutes. The Kresh advanced in a tactical formation that showed they were experienced warriors, but they hadn't counted on the defenders knowing every inch of this land. As they moved forward, the irrigation ditches that Taman had activated became obstacles, forcing them to slow down and adjust their paths. Youngsu gave a signal, and the farmers opened fire with their hunting rifles. The bullets didn't penetrate the Kresh armor, but they were enough to make the warriors take cover and reassess. These primitive humans were fighting back. The Kresh returned fire with their energy weapons. Trees exploded where the blasts hit. The barn's wall caught fire. People scattered to prepared positions using tractors and equipment as shields. The battle became chaotic, nothing like the organized defense they'd planned. Bora grabbed Taman's arm. I can fight them. I'm strong enough. No, Taman said firmly. You're a child. This isn't your fight. They'll kill you all to get to us. Then that's our choice to make. A blast struck near them and Taman pushed Bora behind a tractor. Doyun was with Sumi in the farmhouse, supposedly safe, but nowhere was truly safe anymore. The Kresh were advancing methodically, destroying cover and pushing the defenders back. Kreth roared orders in his own language, and 2 warriors broke off from the main group, heading directly for the farmhouse. They had detected the children's location somehow. Taman ran toward the house, but he was too slow, too far away. He watched in horror as the Kresh warriors kicked in the door. Inside, Sumi stood in front of Doyun with nothing but a scalpel in her shaking hand. You won't touch him, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. The Kresh warrior raised his weapon, and for a moment, Taman thought Sumi would die. But Hyojin's teenage son, Minsu, appeared from behind the door with a fire extinguisher. He blasted it directly into the warrior's face and the creature stumbled back, temporarily blinded. Run, Minsu shouted. Sumi grabbed Doyun and fled through the back door as the warriors recovered. But they were trapped now, caught between the farmhouse and the advancing Kresh. That's when Bora made her choice. She couldn't watch these humans die for her. With a cry that was part rage and part grief, she charged at the Kresh warriors, threatening Sumi and Doyun. Her small body moved with incredible speed and power. She hit the first warrior like a missile, her enhanced strength allowing her to actually stagger the massive creature. The warrior swung at her, but she was faster, dodging and striking at weak points in his armor. She fought with desperation and fury, protecting her brother with everything she had. The second warrior turned his weapon on Bora, but the farmers weren't going to let that happen. They concentrated their fire on him, forcing him to take cover. Old Youngsu threw a homemade explosive, just fertilizer and fuel, but it was enough to knock the warrior off his feet. "The children are fighting for us," someone shouted. "We fight harder." Something shifted in that moment. The defenders had been scared, holding ground because they felt they had to. But seeing Bora risk everything to protect the humans who had protected her ignited something primal. This was a child fighting for them. How could they do less? The farmers fought with renewed courage, using every trick they knew. They set fire to the fields the Kresh were crossing, using the smoke as cover. They used their tractors to ram the alien warriors, the heavy machinery enough to at least knock them down. They turned their irrigation system into a weapon, flooding areas and making the ground unstable. Minho fought alongside them, his training making him deadly accurate even against armored targets. He aimed for joints, for the gaps in plating, for the weapon emitters. One Kresh warrior fell, then another, not dead but injured enough to retreat. But Kreth was pushing through, unstoppable in his determination. He reached the farmhouse where Doyen and Sumi were cornered. Bora screamed and tried to reach them, but two warriors held her back, their strength finally overwhelming hers. No, Taman ran toward his home where his adopted son was about to be taken. He wasn't a warrior or a hero. He was just a farmer and father. But sometimes that was enough. He crashed through the damaged door to find Kreth standing over Doyen, who was pressed against the wall with Sumi's body shielding him. The old veterinarian was bleeding from a wound on her shoulder but refused to move. "Touching," Kreth said mockingly. "The female protects property that isn't even her species. Humans are more foolish than we thought." "He's not property," Taman said, breathing hard. "He's my son." Kreth paused, his translator working on that word. "Son? You claim genetic relation to this Velian?" "I claim family relation. That's stronger than genetics. Impossible. You've known him for weeks. I've known him long enough to love him, long enough to die for him." Taman had no weapons. He was exhausted and scared. But he walked forward anyway, placing himself between Kreth and Doyen, just as Sumi had done. "The whole world is watching this broadcast. If you take him, if you hurt any of us, humanity will know who you are and what you do. You'll never operate in secret again." Kreth's red eyes narrowed. "You think your primitive species can threaten the Kresh Empire? Maybe not. But we can make sure everyone knows you're slavers and child murderers. We can make you the most hated species in the galaxy." For the first time, Kreth seemed uncertain. He looked at the cameras still broadcasting, at the humans refusing to yield, at the child he had come to reclaim standing behind a farmer willing to die for him. Something in the situation wasn't computing with his worldview. Outside, Bora finally broke free from the warriors holding her. She burst into the farmhouse, bloodied but unbowed. She placed herself beside Taman, taking a protective stance over both him and her brother. "Enough," Kreth said finally. "We'll destroy this entire settlement if we have to." But before he could act, Doyen did something incredible. The boy reached out and touched Kreth's armored leg. His empathic power, usually gentle, surged with an intensity born of desperation and emotion. He poured everything into the connection. Every moment of fear and pain from his captivity, every memory of his parents and lost friends, every feeling of love he had for Bora, for Taman, for Nari, for all the humans who had shown him kindness. But more than that, he shared his culture's deepest truth. The Velians believed that all life was connected, that causing pain to others was like poisoning yourself. For a species of empaths and healers, violence was literally self-destructive. Doyen showed Kreth what it felt like to be on both sides of cruelty. The pain of the victim and the poison in the soul of the oppressor. Kreth staggered back, his weapon falling from his grip. For just a moment, his eyes showed something other than cruelty, confusion, maybe even horror at seeing himself through another being's emotions. The moment broke when Bora grabbed Kreth's fallen weapon and pointed. It hit him with shaking hands. Leave now, or I shoot." Taman gently touched her shoulder. "Bora, don't. That would make you like them. They hurt us." "They hurt Doyen. They killed our friends." "I know. But you're better than them. Your whole species is better than them. Don't let them make you into something you're not." Tears streamed down Bora's face as she struggled with the rage and grief inside her. Finally, she lowered the weapon. "Go and tell your empire that humans protect their family. All of it, blood or not. It belongs to science, to humanity. They're not things to own," Taman said firmly. The explosions in town grew louder, and smoke darkened the afternoon sky. Minho's radio exploded with frantic voices reporting armed intruders, people injured, buildings burning. The agent's face went pale as he listened. Whatever was happening in town was beyond normal protocols. "We need to evacuate this area now," Minho said, looking at Taemin with urgent eyes. "Get your daughter and anything you need. We're leaving." "I'm not going anywhere without Bora and Doyen," Taemin said firmly. "The aliens?" Minho's jaw tightened. "Fine, bring them. But we need to move now. These raiders don't take prisoners. They kill anyone who gets in their way." Before Taemin could respond, Bora appeared from the barn, moving with impossible speed. She had heard everything. Her amber eyes were wide with fear and determination. "No," she said in her broken Korean. "We leave. We bring danger to you. We go alone." "You're not strong enough," Taemin protested. "Doyen can barely walk and those things are hunting you." Bora's face crumpled, torn between protecting her brother and protecting this family who had saved them. Doyen emerged from the barn, supported by Dr. Sumi, who had stayed hidden inside. The boy was pale, his glowing markings dim. The shield device Sumi made was strapped to his chest, humming softly. Doyen reached out and touched Taemin's hand. The rush of emotion was overwhelming. The boy was showing him everything at once. His love for Bora, his gratitude to Taemin and Nari, his fear of the raiders, his desperation to keep everyone safe. And something else. A memory of their home planet. Green fields, 2 sons, parents who loved them, a peaceful civilization built on growing things, healing things, nurturing life. "Your people," Taemin said, understanding flooding through him. "You're farmers, like me. Your whole planet is farmers and healers." Doyen nodded, tears streaming down his face. He showed Taemin more. The raiders, the Kresh, were slavers who targeted peaceful worlds. They took children because children could be trained, broken, sold. Bora and Doyen had been part of a colony ship carrying 200 families to a new world. The Kresh attacked, killed the adults, took the children. Only a few escaped when the slaver ship malfunctioned near Earth. 200 children, Sumi whispered, having seen some of the memory too. "Where are the others?" Bora pointed to the sky. "Some dead, some still prisoner, some scattered on this planet hiding like us." The weight of it crashed down on Taemin. This wasn't just about 2 children. This was about hundreds of stolen kids, families destroyed, a peaceful civilization terrorized. And now the Kresh had come to Earth, bringing their violence with them. "We can't run," Taemin said suddenly. "Not anymore. Running won't save anyone." "What are you suggesting?" Minho asked. "You're a farmer, not a soldier." "I'm a father," Taemin corrected. "And these children need more than one person protecting them. They need a community." An idea was forming in his mind, crazy and desperate, but possibly their only chance. He looked at Sumi, at Minho, at his daughter standing brave beside him. "We make a stand. We call everyone we trust. We show people what's happening. We force everyone to choose." "Choose what?" Minho asked. "Choose what kind of species humans want to be. The kind that hands over scared children to slavers? Or the kind that protects them?" Over the next 2 hours, Taemin made the most important calls of his life. First, he called his neighbors. Old Young-soo, who had fought in the war decades ago. The Lee family, who lived on the next farm. The Kim family, who ran the general store. He told them everything. Some thought he was crazy. Some hung up. But enough believed him. Enough said they would come. Dr. Sumi called other veterinarians and doctors she trusted. People who had dedicated their lives to healing and protecting the vulnerable. They came too, bringing medical supplies and questions, but also open minds. Nari's teacher, Hye-jin, arrived with her husband and teenage sons. She had always told her students that education meant learning to see beyond prejudice and fear. Now she had a chance to prove it. Within 3 hours, 12 families had gathered at Taemin's farm. They came cautiously, some skeptical, some curious. When they saw Bora and Doyen, when Doyen touched their hands and shared his feelings, when they heard the full story, something shifted in the room. Young-soo, the old veteran, spoke first. "I fought in a war where we forgot to ask who the real enemy was. We hurt people who just wanted to live in peace. I won't make that mistake again. These children stay protected." The Lee family agreed. The Kims agreed. One by one, the families committed. They would hide the twins, move them between houses, create a network of safety. They would stand between the children and anyone who tried to take them. Minho watched all of this with a complicated expression. Finally, he spoke. "You're asking these people to become criminals, harboring aliens, obstructing government investigation, possibly engaging with hostile forces. I'm asking them to be human, Taemin replied, in the best sense of the word. Minho was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He took out his government badge and set it on the table. I became an agent because I wanted to protect people. My sister died because powerful people decided she didn't matter enough to save. I won't let that happen again. What are you saying? Sumi asked. I'm saying that if we're going to do this, we do it right. We don't just hide. We expose them. The Kresh have been operating in the shadows, taking children from planets that can't fight back. We bring them into the light. We make them the criminals the whole world can see. He pulled out his phone and made a call. I have contacts. Journalists who've been investigating rumors of alien activity for years. They've been called crazy conspiracy theorists. But if we can show them proof, real proof, they'll broadcast it everywhere. The Kresh will attack before that happens, Young-Soo pointed out. They know the children are here. They'll come tonight, maybe sooner. Then we prepare, Taemin said. We've got hours, maybe. We use them. The community sprang into action with remarkable coordination. Young-Soo, drawing on his military experience, organized defenses. The farmers knew their land better than anyone. They set up observation points, planned fallback positions, prepared improvised obstacles. The irrigation ditches became barriers. The tractors became mobile shields. Hunting rifles were cleaned and loaded, not to kill but to slow attackers down. Sumi and the other medical personnel set up a triage area in the farmhouse basement. Hijin took the children, including Nari, to the safest location they could prepare, an underground storm shelter on Young-Soo's property, stocked with food and water. Bora worked with the teenage boys, using her strength to move equipment and create defensive positions. She was scared but focused, channeling her fear into action. Doyen, too weak to help physically, used his empathic sense to monitor everyone's emotional state, warning Taemin when someone was becoming too stressed or afraid. Minho's journalist contacts arrived just before sunset. A woman named Ji with a camera crew, all looking skeptical until they saw the twins. Jay's hands shook as she filmed Bora, lifting a 1-ton tractor tire like it was made of foam. She nearly dropped her camera when Doyen touched her hand and shared his memories. This is real, Jay whispered. This is the biggest story in human history. It's only a story if we survive to tell it, Minho reminded her. Keep filming everything. If the Kresh attack, if the government tries to cover this up, if anything happens, this footage goes live. Understood? Jay nodded, her journalistic instincts overriding her fear. Her crew set up cameras at multiple angles, ready to document whatever came next. As night fell, Taemin gathered everyone in the barn. Nearly 40 people now, from children to elderly, from farmers to doctors to the journalist crew. They were scared. They were unprepared. But they were together. I don't know if we can win, Taemin said honestly. The Kresh are warriors. We're farmers and shopkeepers and teachers. But I know this. Every child deserves protection. Every family deserves to stay together. If we stand aside now, if we let fear decide, we lose something more important than this fight. We lose what makes us human. Young-Soo stood up. I'm too old to be brave. But I'm too old to be a coward too. I stand with Taemin, Sumi stood. I stand with the children, Hijin stood. I stand for what I teach my students. That compassion matters more than fear. One by one they stood. The community making its choice. Not running, not hiding, but standing together. Bora watched with tears streaming down her face. She whispered something in her language, then in Korean. This is why Doyen and I loved your planet from the beginning. From first moment hiding in your forest. Humans have something my people lost long ago when we became too peaceful. You have the courage to fight for what's right even when afraid. What did your people lose? Taemin asked. The willingness to be dangerous when needed. To bare teeth when cubs are threatened. Bora smiled through her tears. You call this humanity. We call it the fire of protection. It's beautiful. Doyen touched multiple hands at once, sending waves of courage and determination through the gathered people. His markings glowed brighter than they had in weeks. For the first time since his collapse, he looked strong. Outside lights appeared in the sky, not searching patterns this time. Direct approach vectors, multiple craft descending toward the farm. The Kresh were coming, and 3 weeks had passed since Taemin found Bora and Doyen. The twins had become part of the household rhythm, moving silently through the barn at night, helping with chores in the safety of darkness. Taman had set up a better living space for them in the loft with a battery-powered heater, proper bedding, and books that Nari brought from school. The transformation in both children was remarkable. Bora had gained weight and strength, her lavender skin glowing with health. She learned Korean quickly, speaking in simple sentences now. Doyen was still weaker than his sister, but his fevers had stopped and his empathic abilities had grown stronger. He could sense Taman's moods from across the barn, often appearing with a cup of tea when the farmer was stressed, or staying quietly nearby when Taman felt lonely. The farm had never been more productive. With Doyun's ability to sense plant health, and Bora's incredible strength to help with heavy work, they accomplished in hours what used to take Taman days. The fields were green and lush, the crops growing faster than they should. Other farmers noticed. Some praised Taman's hard work. Others grew suspicious of his sudden success. Nari had bonded with the twins like siblings. Every afternoon after school, she rushed to the barn with her homework and books. She taught them to read Korean, and they taught her words in their language, which sounded like wind chimes and water. Bora was protective of Nari, just as she was with Doyun. Once, when Nari fell from the loft ladder, Bora caught her with reflexes too fast for human eyes. Taman watched them together and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Wholeness. His wife Jiwon had always wanted more children. They had tried for years after Nari, but it never happened. Now, in the strangest way, he had 3 children. Not the family he planned, but perhaps the family he was meant to have. But danger was closing in from multiple directions. The black vehicles became more frequent in town. Taman learned that the man leading the investigation was named Minho, a government agent from some secret department. He had been interviewing farmers, asking about unusual crop growth, strange lights, and missing time. Taman avoided going to town when possible, sending Nari with shopping lists instead. One afternoon, while Taman was working in the south field, a black sedan pulled up to his property. Minho stepped out, wearing a plain suit and carrying a briefcase. He was younger than Taman expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Taman?" Minho called out, walking toward him. "I'm Minho from the Agricultural Research Department. Could I have a few minutes of your time?" Taman's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. He wiped his hands on his pants and nodded. "Of course. What's this about?" Minho smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We're conducting a survey of farms in this region. There have been some unusual crop yields reported, and we're trying to understand what factors might be contributing. Your farm has been mentioned specifically. Your neighbors say your productivity has increased dramatically in recent weeks. Just good weather and hard work," Taman said, shrugging, "and I've been using better irrigation methods." "I see." Minho pulled out a tablet and made notes. "Have you noticed anything unusual in the area? Strange lights in the sky? Unusual weather patterns? Any equipment malfunctions?" Taman forced himself to meet Minho's eyes. "Nothing unusual. Why? Is there something I should be worried about?" "Just routine questions." Minho looked around the property, his gaze lingering on the barn. "That's a large barn. Do you store equipment there?" "Equipment, hay, feed. Normal farm things. Would you mind if I took a look? Sometimes we find pest issues that farmers don't notice. Could help explain your improved yields." Taman's blood ran cold. The twins were in the loft, hiding. If Minho searched thoroughly, he would find them. "I'd rather you didn't," Taman said, trying to sound casual. "I've got tools and chemicals stored in ways that probably violate safety codes. Don't want to get myself in trouble." Minho's smile became thin. "I'm not here about safety violations. Just crops. Still, I'd prefer not today. Maybe you could come back with an appointment. I'll make sure everything is organized properly." For a moment, tension hung between them. Minho studied Taman's face, clearly suspicious. Then he nodded slowly. "Of course. I'll schedule a proper inspection. Should give you time to organize things." After Minho left, Taman stood in the driveway, shaking. That had been too close. He hurried to the barn and climbed to the loft. Bora and Doyen were huddled in the far corner, hidden behind hay bales. They had heard everything. "Danger?" Bora asked in her accented Korean. "Yes," Taman admitted. "That man suspects something. He'll come back, and next time I might not be able to stop him from searching." Doyen touched Taman's hand, and the farmer felt the boy's fear and determination mixed together. The child was ready to run, ready to sacrifice himself to protect the family. Taman squeezed his hand. No, we don't run yet, but we need help. That evening, after Nari was asleep, Taman made a difficult decision. He drove to the edge of town where Dr. Sumi, the local veterinarian, lived. He had known Sumi for years. She was trustworthy and, more importantly, she was smart. If anyone could help, it was her. He knocked on her door at nearly 10 o'clock. Sumi answered in her robe, surprised. Taman, is one of your animals sick? No, but I need your help with something. Something you won't believe. Sumi studied his face and saw the desperation there. Come in. In her living room, Taman told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression moving from disbelief to shock to wonder. When he finished, she sat back and whispered, Aliens. Real aliens. On your farm. I need your help, Sumi. Doyen is still weak. I've been treating them with veterinary medicine, but I don't really know what I'm doing. What if they get seriously sick? What if they need real medical care? Sumi was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up. Show me. They drove back to the farm in silence. In the barn, Taman called softly for Bora and Doyun. They emerged from the loft carefully, and Sumi gasped when she saw them in the lamplight. Their lavender skin, their amber eyes, Doyun's glowing markings. It was impossible and yet real. My God, Sumi breathed. They're beautiful. Bora stood protectively in front of her brother, but Doyen stepped forward and offered his hand to Sumi. She looked at Taman, confused. He wants to show you his feelings, Taman explained. He's empathic. He can share emotions through touch. Sumi carefully took Doyen's small hand. Her eyes widened as she felt the rush of his emotions. Trust, hope, gratitude. When she pulled back, there were tears on her face. He's scared but brave. He's in pain but doesn't complain. He loves you like a father. Will you help them? Taman asked. Sumi looked at the alien children, then at Taman. I became a veterinarian because I believe all creatures deserve care and compassion. These are children, regardless of what planet they come from. Of course I'll help them. Over the next few days, Sumi came to the farm each evening examining the twins and learning about their biology. She discovered that Doyen's weakness came from Earth's electromagnetic fields interfering with his nervous system. She fashioned a simple device using materials from electronics stores, creating something like a shield that helped stabilize his condition. But the situation was deteriorating in other ways. More black vehicles appeared in the area. Surveillance increased. And worse, there were reports of strangers in town who looked almost human but not quite. Their movements were too precise, their questions too direct. Taman realized these must be the raiders, the ones who had captured Bora and Doyen originally. One stormy night, everything came to a crisis. Doyen collapsed suddenly, screaming in pain. The lightning from the storm was overwhelming his sensitive nervous system, despite Sumi's device. Taman called her frantically, and she rushed over in the rain. They worked together in the loft, Sumi trying different treatments while Bora held her brother and cried. The storm raged outside and Doyen's glowing markings flickered like dying lights. Finally, using a combination of sedatives and the shield device turned to maximum power, they stabilized him. But it was close. Too close. This can't continue, Sumi said, wiping sweat from her forehead. His biology isn't compatible with Earth's natural electromagnetic patterns. The storms here could kill him. What do we do? Taman asked desperately. They need to contact their people. There must be someone looking for them. Bora, who had been listening, spoke up. Ship damaged. Beacon broken. Cannot call home. Can you fix it? Sumi asked. If we get you materials, electronic parts? Bora nodded slowly. Maybe, need time. Need parts. Then we get you what you need, Taman decided. We build a beacon. We call your people. But time was running out. The next morning, Minho returned to the farm with 2 other agents and an official inspection warrant. Taman stood at his door, blocking their entry. This is my property. You need more than a piece of paper. We have reason to believe you're harboring something that poses a risk to national security, Minho said coldly. Stand aside or we'll arrest you for obstruction. Nari appeared at her father's side, her young face defiant. You can't take them. They're our family. Minho's expression shifted to surprise, then understanding. So it's true. You're hiding them. Mr. Taman, you need to understand. Whatever you found, it's not yours to keep. 3 days had passed since Taman found the alien children in his field. He had moved them to the barn's hidden loft, a space above the main floor that he used to store old equipment. It was dusty but dry, with enough room for the twins to rest comfortably. Taman brought up old mattresses, clean sheets, and all the spare blankets he could find. The female twin, who Taman had started calling the protective one in his mind, watched his every move with careful eyes. Her brother was weaker, sleeping most of the time. Taman was worried about him. The boy had strange markings on his arms that glowed faintly at night, like bioluminescent patterns under his lavender skin. Communication was difficult. Taman tried speaking slowly, using simple words, but they understood nothing. The twins spoke in their musical language, full of sounds that human vocal cords probably couldn't make. But Taman was patient. He had learned patience from farming, from waiting for seeds to grow and seasons to change. On the fourth morning, Taman brought up breakfast. Scrambled eggs, rice, and fruit. He wasn't sure what aliens ate, but these seemed safe. Nari came with him, carrying a notebook and colored pencils. She had an idea. "Dad, we can draw," she said. "Pictures. They'll understand pictures." It was brilliant. Taman felt a surge of pride in his daughter. While the twins ate carefully, testing each food, Nari began to draw. She drew a stick figure of herself and wrote Nari underneath. Then she pointed to herself and repeated her name. The female twin understood immediately. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Bora. Then she pointed to her brother and said Doyun. "Bora," Nari repeated, smiling. "Doyun." She drew two new figures and wrote their names. Bora's face transformed with the first real smile they had seen from her. She took the pencil and began to draw. Her artistic skill was remarkable. She drew a planet with 2 moons, then small figures that looked like her and Doyen. She drew a large ship in space, then other ships attacking it. Her drawings became more frantic as she showed the attack, their capture, and their escape. Taman watched, his stomach tightening. These children had been through something terrible. Bora drew the creatures who had captured them, large beings with angular features and cruel expressions. She drew chains and cages. Then she drew the ship crashing and 2 small figures running into the forest. "Raiders," Taman said quietly. "Slave traders, maybe." Nari looked upset. "That's horrible." Bora seemed to understand their tone. She nodded sadly and drew more. A planet labeled with symbols, probably their homeworld's name. 2 adult figures who were likely their parents. She pointed to them, then to herself and Doyen, then shrugged and made a questioning gesture. She didn't know if her parents were alive. Taman felt his heart break a little. He understood that loss, that uncertainty. He put his hand on Bora's shoulder gently. She tensed at first, then relaxed. He pointed to her drawing of her parents, then to his heart, trying to show sympathy. Over the following days, they built a language between them. Mixture of Korean words, drawings, and gestures. Bora learned quickly. Water, food, thank you, safe. Doyen was slower. Still weak, but he would smile when Nari visited, which he did every day after school. Taman treated their injuries with veterinary supplies from the farm. He had antibiotics for livestock, bandages, and basic medical knowledge from years of caring for animals. The twins healed remarkably fast. Cuts that should have taken weeks to heal closed in days, but Doyen's condition worried him. The boy ran fevers at night, shivering despite the blankets. On the 10th day, something amazing happened. Taman was checking on them in the evening when Doyen, who had been quiet and withdrawn, reached out and touched his hand. The moment their skin connected, Taman felt something he couldn't explain. A wave of emotion, not his own. Gratitude, trust, and affection flowing from the child into him. It was like feeling someone else's heart. Taman gasped and pulled back in surprise. Bora stood up quickly, protective as always, but then she smiled and nodded. She took Taman's hand and placed it on her brother's palm again. This time Taman was ready. The emotions were clearer now. Doyen was showing him feelings, communicating without words. The boy was saying thank you, saying he felt safe, saying he trusted Taman like a father. Tears filled Taman's eyes. He squeezed Doyen's hand gently and tried to send back his own feelings. Protection, care, promise of safety. He didn't know if it worked, but Doyen's face brightened and his glow markings pulsed with a warm light. "You can feel emotions," Taman whispered. "That's your gift." Bora demonstrated her own ability the next day. Taman was moving heavy feed sacks in the barn when she came down from the loft. She pointed to the sacks, each weighing at least 50 kilograms, then to herself. Before Taman could stop her, she lifted one with ease as if it weighed nothing. Her thin arms shouldn't have been able to do that, but she carried it across the barn without strain. Taman stared in amazement. These children were extraordinary, but they were still just children who needed care and protection. As days turned into weeks, routines developed. Taman taught them to help with farm chores at night when no one could see. Bora's strength made her excellent at moving equipment. Doyen, despite his weakness, would walk through the crops and touch the plants gently. One night, Taman noticed something strange. The section of corn that Doyen had walked through looked healthier than the rest. The stalks stood taller, the ears fuller. He watched more carefully the next night. When Doyen touched the plants, he seemed to sense something about them. He could tell which ones needed more water, which had pests, which soil was poor. "You understand plants," Taman said, amazed. He led Doyen to a section where crops were struggling. The boy touched the earth, closed his eyes, and after a moment pointed to the irrigation line. Taman checked it and found it was clogged. Doyen had diagnosed the problem without any equipment. The farm began to thrive in ways Taman had never seen. His yields increased. His crops were healthier. Word spread among local farmers about how well Taman's farm was doing. Some asked for his secret. He just smiled and said hard work and good luck. But luck was running out in other ways. Strange vehicles had been spotted on the roads around town. Black cars with tinted windows. People in suits asking questions at the general store, the post office, the school. They claimed to be from agricultural department, checking on crop diseases. But their questions were odd, asking about unusual sightings, strange lights, anything out of ordinary. Taman heard about it from other farmers at the market. An old friend named Youngsu pulled him aside. "These government people, they're asking weird questions, Taman. Asking if anyone saw spacecraft or found strange objects. You seen anything on your property?" Taman kept his face neutral. "Nothing unusual. Just crops and chickens." "Why?" Youngsu shrugged. "Probably nothing. But be careful. They seem very interested in our area." That evening, Taman sat with Bora and tried to explain the danger through drawings. He drew official-looking figures, then drew them taking the twins away. Bora understood. Her face became serious and she drew quickly. She showed ships in the sky, searching. The raiders who had captured them were still looking. And now human authorities were searching too. They were trapped between two threats. The raiders wanted them back as property. The government would want to study them, lock them away in some facility. Taman made a decision. He drew himself and Nari standing in front of Bora and Doyun, protecting them. He tapped the drawing firmly. "We keep you safe, promise." Bora's eyes filled with tears. She hugged Taman suddenly, fiercely. He hugged her back, thinking of his own daughter, thinking of all children who deserved safety and love. When she pulled back, she spoke in her language, then tried in Korean. "Father," she said, the word heavily accented but clear. She pointed to him, then to herself and Doyun. "Father." Taman's vision blurred with tears. He nodded and touched his heart. "Yes, family." That night, as Taman lay in bed, he heard Nari crying softly in her room. He went to her and found her sitting by the window looking at the stars. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "I'm scared they'll take Bora and Doyen away," she said. "I like having them here. It feels like we're a family again." "Not so empty." Taman sat beside her and pulled her close. "I know. I feel that too. Mom would want us to protect them, wouldn't she?" "Yes," Taman said. "She would. And we will. Whatever it takes." Outside, unknown to them, a man sat in a black car parked on the road near their property. His name was Minho, and he was a government agent assigned to investigate alien activity in the region. He had been watching Taman's farm for 3 days now. Something about the farmer's behavior seemed off. The way he looked at the sky, the way he checked the barn constantly, the sudden improvement in his crops. Minho made notes in his file. He would visit the farm tomorrow, just routine questions, but his instincts told him he was close to finding what his superiors were looking for. The sun was setting over Taman's farm, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the field stretching before him. The corn was ready for harvest, but the irrigation system in the far field had been acting strange all week. Water wasn't flowing properly, and he needed to fix it before the crops suffered. Taman grabbed his toolbox from the truck and started walking toward the forest boundary where the problematic ditch was located. His boots crunched on the dry earth as he moved away from the farmhouse. The air was cooling down and crickets were beginning their evening song. He had been working this land for 15 years ever since he married G1. Now 3 years after her death, he worked it alone. Well, not completely alone. His daughter Nari was waiting at home, probably doing her homework at the kitchen table. She was 8 years old now with her mother's bright eyes and curious nature. Taman tried his best to be both father and mother to her, though some days felt impossible. As he reached the irrigation ditch near the tree line, Taman heard something unusual. It wasn't an animal sound. It was something else, a whimpering like someone crying but trying to stay quiet. He froze and listened carefully. There it was again, coming from behind the thick bushes near the old oak tree. Taman's heart began to race. His first thought was that someone was hurt, maybe a hiker or a child from town. He pushed through the bushes, his toolbox forgotten on the ground. What he found on the other side made him stop breathing. 2 children were lying on the ground, their hands and feet bound with strange metallic restraints that glowed faintly in the dimming light. But these weren't human children. Their skin was pale lavender, smooth and almost glowing. Their eyes were large and amber-colored, filled with terror as they looked up at him. They wore torn clothing that looked like some kind of uniform, covered in symbols he had never seen before. Taman stood there, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. Aliens. Real aliens. On his farm. Bound and injured. The female child tried to speak, her voice shaking. The words were completely foreign, musical but desperate. She was trying to protect the male child who looked weaker and was covered in more bruises. Taman could see they were twins, their features nearly identical. His shock lasted only a moment. These were children, human or not. They were hurt and afraid. Taman's paternal instincts kicked in, the same instincts that made him check on Nari every night, that made him kiss her scraped knees and chase away her nightmares. He raised his hands slowly, palms open, trying to show he meant no harm. The female child flinched, pulling her brother closer. Taman spoke softly. "It's okay. I won't hurt you. I want to help." They couldn't understand his words, but his tone seemed to calm them slightly. Taman slowly reached for the multi-tool in his pocket. The restraints looked electronic, but maybe he could cut through them. He gestured to the bindings, then to his tool, asking permission with his eyes. The female child hesitated, then nodded slightly. Taman knelt beside them and examined the restraints. They were warm to the touch and hummed with energy. He tried cutting at the seam, and after several attempts, the material began to give way. First the male child's hands, then his feet, then the female's. As soon as they were free, both children tried to stand but collapsed. They were too weak. Taman ran back to his truck and grabbed the emergency water bottles he always kept there. He also took the wool blankets from behind the seat. When he returned, he offered them water. The male child drank desperately, while his sister watched Taman carefully, still protective. After they both drank, Taman wrapped them in the blankets. They were shivering despite the warm evening. Taman made a decision. He couldn't leave them here. He couldn't call the police or the government. Something told him these children would disappear into a laboratory if officials found them. He thought of Nari, how he would want someone to help her if she were lost and afraid. He gestured to his truck, then to himself, trying to communicate that he would take them somewhere safe. The female child looked at her brother and something passed between them. A silent conversation. Then she nodded. Taman helped them both to the truck. They could barely walk, leaning on him for support. He settled them in the back seat, keeping the blankets around them. As he drove back to the farmhouse, his mind raced. What was he doing? What would Nari think? What if there were others looking for these children? As if answering his question, lights appeared in the sky, not airplane lights or stars. These moved in ways that defied physics, searching patterns across the horizon. Taman pressed the accelerator, suddenly urgent to get the children under cover. He pulled into the barn instead of the house. The truck's headlights illuminated the old building filled with equipment and hay. Taman helped the children out and guided them to the back corner where he stored feed. There was a small room there, originally meant for storing tools. It had a door and no windows. As he was settling them into the space with more blankets and water, he heard footsteps. His heart jumped. The barn door opened, and Nari stood there in her school uniform, her backpack still on her shoulders. "Dad? I heard the truck. Why didn't you come to the house?" Taman moved to block her view, but it was too late. Nari had seen past him. Her eyes went wide as she saw the two alien children huddled in the corner. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Nari did something that made Taemin's heart swell with pride and fear. She walked slowly past him, knelt down to the children's level, and smiled. "Hi," she said gently. "I'm Nari, are you okay?" The female alien child stared at Nari, then at Taemin. Something in her expression changed. Recognition, perhaps, of kindness across species. She whispered something in her language that sounded like a greeting. Taemin knelt beside his daughter and put his arm around her. "Nari, we need to keep them safe. Can you do that? Can you keep this secret?" Nari looked at her father with the serious expression she wore when she was thinking hard. "They're scared, Dad, like I was scared when Mom died." "We have to help them." Taemin nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, we do. But it's going to be difficult and maybe dangerous." "Mom would help them," Nari said simply. It was true. Jiwon had been the kind of person who rescued injured birds and fed stray cats. As if to confirm their decision, more lights appeared in the sky, visible through the barn's gaps. These were closer now, searching more aggressively. The male alien child made a frightened sound and pointed up. His sister spoke urgently in her language, and the meaning was clear. Someone was hunting them. Taemin made his choice. He had found these children on his land, bound and hurt. Maybe fate had put them in his path. Maybe Jiwon was somehow guiding him. Whatever the reason, he would protect them. He was just a simple farmer, but his late wife had always said he had the stubbornest streak in the whole province. "Okay," he said to both Nari and the alien children. "We hide them. No one can know they're here. Understand?" Nari nodded firmly. The alien twins looked at each other, then at Taemin and Nari. The female child placed her hand over her heart and said something that sounded like a promise. Outside, the strange lights continued their search across the night sky. But in the barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and earth, an unlikely family was beginning to form.